welcome to the County Connection Show for March of 2014. I'm your host, Scott Vargo. I'm joined by Karn, Thomas, and Dan, your county commissioners. We want to start off today. We're going to recap a little bit of information from a Colorado Department of Transportation meeting that took place with the board over the last couple of weeks. So, Karn, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. We have quarterly meetings with Cdot. We're in a newer region. It's been a while now, but we're in a newer region. So we've had a lot to talk about. And this last meeting was full of a lot of interested people talking about the major traffic congestion that we had over the last couple months during the perfect storm situations with high volume traffic and high volume snow. And of course we can't control a lot of those factors, and we're happy to see high volume traffic, but we had some serious situations where there was 4 hours of people sitting on I-70 or in gridlock in other places, and the emergency responders were really the impetus to try to look at this more carefully and see what we can do to prevent a situation where we can't get an ambulance through, for instance. Mm-hmm. So we had the chief traffic engineer, I think is his title, from Cdot, Brian Rice. Yeah. Not our technology guy. And he's an engineer who looks at traffic patterns and how to move traffic. So we sat with him and talked about some local ideas about how to move traffic more safely and make sure we can get the emergency response, bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Good. Other comments from that meeting?
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. The other comment that was really important, it happens to be one of my pet peeves, and that is that a lot of what causes these problems is lack of traction. And I saw this last night. A Jeep, 4-wheel drive, very nice car, flipped around going the opposite way on I-70, because you can have great 4-wheel drive, fancy high-end vehicle, but if you don't have good tires, if you don't have good traction, then that is exactly what caused a lot of these traffic pileups that we had.
Yeah, it's really great that Cdot brought in this person, Brian Rice, because he's comes from a military background, so he actually spent time in the Middle East and really understands kind of the movement of people and you know, looking at ways to be creative to minimize some of these traffic situations that really are a huge inconvenience for locals as well as visitors, but at the end of the day turns out to be, you know, a huge, you know, life safety issue if an ambulance can't get through or just, you know, emergency situations that happen on the highway. And so it's exciting to see them really look at kind of travel demand management to entice folks to travel during off-peak times, but also look at creative ways to maybe prevent people from getting on the highway in the first place, especially if, and Karn, I even heard situations of about 8 hours for some people coming from, I don't know if it was Eagle County or Summit, but because they tried to go on I-70 towards the tunnel and that was shut down, and then they took 285 and that was backed up as well, but just terrible situations. So I know Cdot's working hard to incorporate more of the variable message boards and also look at technology like Cdot Mobile. So folks, if you're not on Cdot Mobile, take a look at that, because that's real-time information. But the I-70 Coalition, they actually have a link off there too where you can find good deals, where if you're stuck on I-70 or in Summit County, you might be able to see a good deal for whatever, $1 or some money off a pizza or lodging deals as well. So you might not have to just sit in traffic forever, but, you know, spend another night in Summit County. So
I think the guy's name is Ryan Rice. Operations director is what I recollect from that meeting. But I think the key thing that, you know, it was nice to have all of the ski areas in that meeting with us, because the discussion was centered around, you know, in order to not have this turn into the kind of mess that we had those couple of Sundays where we just had gridlock in parking lots surrounding all of I-70 as well. We have to keep the highway moving, even if slowly. Because if you've got cars out there with traction problems, well, guess what? If you can keep them moving so that they don't stop, because that's when they can't get started again. If you can keep them moving, then you've got a chance. And if that means that we have to meter onto the highways and all the rest, then let's start taking a look at that. But that also means, well, what does that do to the backup into the towns and into the parking lots and all the rest? And then it becomes a huge issue for us. If a fire truck can't get to a fire, if an ambulance can't get to somebody that's hurt. So, and appreciated how earnest Cdot was about understanding what that meant for us locally. So, more to come in terms of a group working together to figure out what we do. But it was a good response from Cdot, and we've got people working on it. Chief Hanschmidt from the town of Silverthorne was very, very active participant in this conversation, and we appreciate him being there as well.
Yeah, good. And it's interesting, you look at the traffic flow in terms of numbers, and that weekend was a busy number, but it wasn't like off the charts busy. And busy months for the Eisenhower Johnson Tunnel is about 1 million traffic counts that go through that tunnel. And in that weekend, I think on one day, that Sunday was about 30,000 vehicle counts in one direction, which is not. It's not a huge number, but you combine quite a few people, but not record breaking, but also really bad weather and bad tires. Possibly truckers not chaining up potentially, but
of those thousands of people who were traveling, it was only 43 that they identified that were spun out because of lack of traction. So just those few people caused thousands and thousands of people not only great inconvenience, but some real safety concerns.
Sure. All right, Karin, you've got a couple more relatively quick topics that you wanted to cover. One is related to, so in the pictures behind us, we've got all the snow. We have much more than that right now, and that snow all has to go somewhere. So you wanted to talk a little bit real quickly about flooding.
Sure, we're still in the peak season for snow, and our highest snowpack is usually yet to come, and we're off the charts right now. So we're planning ahead for what some people call mud season, but it's also the potential for a severe flood season this year. We have an annual meeting where we get together with emergency manager types and with NOAA representative. So we have some really good, the best weather forecasting we can, and we look at where we're likely to have flooding. And so this year, please pay attention, because if you're going away during mud season, you may be going away during that peak flood time, and we could have severe flooding in any of our basins. We are already working very closely with Denver Water to make sure that we're releasing as much water out of the reservoir early on. Right now we have 400 CFS flowing in the lower blue, which is just about unheard of. It's usually 50 CFS this time of year. So they're reducing the reservoir level. There really isn't anywhere to the east to send all that water this year because their reservoirs are full. So no matter what basin you're in, please pay close attention, and if you're in one of those flood zones, and we'll be giving out more information as we get closer.
Good. And then one other date announcement that you wanted to make related to Earth Hour.
Yes. This is once again the time of year.
This is the Karin
Earth
we get to celebrate Earth Hour, and this is just 1 hour, but it's a time to set aside. There are over 100 countries participating, many thousands of cities participating, and iconic buildings will be turning off lights during the 8:30 to 9:30 hour, including the Eiffel Tower, the Empire State Building,
the County Commons.
The County Commons.
Right.
Iconic.
And
talk about icons. When you talk about icons, you got to throw the County Commons in there.
So it's just an invitation to participate by having a candlelight dinner and turn off all the devices, turn off the lights, and just
Wait a minute.
and enjoy each other's company.
You didn't say anything about turning off my phone. Holy cow.
Well, I guess if it's not plugged in. And just take a moment to think about how you can be more efficient in using energy and anything that we can do to make a more sustainable planet going forward.
Okay,
Love
good.
it.
And the county's participated the last several years, so we'll continue to participate. All right, great. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the County Connection Show. I'm still Scott. That is still Dan, Thomas, and Karn. We're going to talk now a bit about ambulance. You may have seen some information in the local newspaper or on the web around some really exciting changes that are taking place around ambulance service within Summit County. We have for a while now known that we have some financial challenges within our ambulance system, and we have been working, and our ambulance folks have been working with some of the local fire districts, in particular Red, White, and Blue Fire, to try to come up with some ways that we could partner with those organizations to improve the service and to take better advantage of the resources that we have within our community. And so I'll let whomever wants to chime in and talk a little bit more specifically about what's happening between the county ambulance service and Red, White, and Blue.
Well, I think probably the first thing that most people need to understand is our ambulance system in Summit County is an enterprise fund, and it has for many years operated off of only the fees that we charge for ambulance trips. That's very, very unusual in this day and age. Everybody around us many years prior had to go to the voters and ask for funding to support their ambulance system. And we've been beating the odds for quite a few years. We, looking forward, know that we just can't do that. There are a number of factors combining together that tell us that we're simply not going to be able to operate off of the fees alone. And so a lot of conversation has been going on. The fire departments, notably Red, White, and Blue, and Lake Dillon, have participated with us in studying this issue. And we believe that there's a way that we can realize hopefully some cost savings by collaborating with the fire departments. And so this effort that we've started with Red, White, and Blue is very exciting for all of us in terms of trying to address those financial shortfalls and just realize better efficiency out of what we do and what the fire departments have to offer. More to come on that, but I think the important thing for everyone to understand is your tax dollars have not been at work supporting ambulance. They will go to work as we start to combine with the fire districts to try to deliver this service. But there's still a funding shortfall that we don't have a solution to yet. Mm-hmm. So,
yep. Yeah. Now in the future, as a result of all that, the Red, White, and Blue firefighters are also trained as EMTs and paramedics, and so they'll be using their red ambulance that they have right now. They call that Medic 6. And so right now they're taking second calls, which are more or less second 911 calls, but in the near future they're going to be taking the first calls, and we'll be transporting to our local hospital here in Frisco. So I think it's a really exciting partnership when you look at adding more resources into our system, individuals that are highly trained, and this is just a unique partnership, really, when you look at the excellent staffing that we have right now with Summit County Ambulance Service and combine that with Red, White, and Blue. I think that's a real win-win for the folks that live within the Red, White, and Blue Fire Protection District. So this partnership is only for that area, so it's more or less the Blue River territory up to Hoosier Pass over to more or less Farmers Corner area is more or less the Red, White, and Blue district area.
Yeah, and there's nothing that our ambulance service has done that's wrong or that's been mismanaged. It's simply a change.
Well, quite the contrary.
Yeah, it's a change in just collection rates. It's a change in our healthcare system overall within the country, and the fact is that expenses to operate an ambulance service continue to increase. Unfortunately, collection rates continue to decrease, and those factors combined have just made that enterprise model that Thomas mentioned untenable going forward. And so we have to look at some new approach. And we quickly recognize that there are resources within those fire districts within the community that could be better utilized. And the fire districts want to be bigger partners, bigger participants in EMS services. So it made for a great opportunity for us to bring them into the fold.
It's the Summit County way. We figure out how to collaborate and work with each other. And that takes a lot of time. Change is difficult, but it's the right thing to do to try to let the general public understand what kind of challenges we've got. For every 10 rides that we give, basically 4 people don't pay us. And you've got to get that person transported. You can't leave somebody that's injured at the side of the road. You've got to give them transportation to the emergency room. But right now, of every 10 rides we give, this is the way to think of this, 4 of those people aren't paying us for that transportation. And that's just a business model that's going to get worse and worse, and it's not going to work without some sort of additional funding. And so, to collaborate with these fire departments is an important part of figuring out a solution, but it's not the entire solution. I wish it was, but it's not. We're going to have to figure out a way to get some additional funding in there. Everybody around us long ago had to go to the voters and say, we've got to have some tax funding in order for this to work. So I think that's what we're probably looking at as well.
Yep. Karin, did you want to add something?
Just going back to that collection rate, if you tell people that our collection rate is 61, 62%, they think, what? What kind of business model is that? What kind of business would be able to function with a collection rate like that? But our collection rate is actually astoundingly good.
Yeah.
And that's surprising to most people. We have been doing a spectacular job in terms of the quality of service that people have received here, lives that have been saved, to the collections. And it has been run by the county, which is not the case in most of our surrounding counties. It's a special district that has special tax funding devoted to it.
Right.
So it's a different model, and we are working as hard as we can to figure out savings, and collaboration is essential. And we are really good at it in Summit County, but it doesn't make it easy. It's easier just to do your own thing. So we're taking steps to find some savings, but we will not be able to fill that deficit.
Yep. And we're trying to maintain, again, the same level of quality service that everybody has grown accustomed to. And so, again, as Dan mentioned, the fire district personnel are very well trained, very similarly trained to Summit County Ambulance, and will grow more and more skills as they become more and more involved within the system over time. So, all right, we'll jump from this one to Dan. There was we're talking about health. We'll talk about forest health now. There was a forest health meeting
that
not
was
too
a terrible
long ago.
segue.
That was a great segue.
All right, that was a great segue.
I dispute that. So talk a little bit about that meeting, who was there, who put that together?
Yeah, it was organized by Senator Michael Bennett, and the idea was to look at innovative solutions that we have here in Colorado that we can share not only with the senator, but also the real headliner in the group was the Undersecretary of Agriculture, Robert Bonney. And so Robert Bonney's role as Undersecretary is that he is the chief, or more or less the head of the U.S. Forest Service. So that was a very important meeting on a number of reasons. But I mean, you look at Summit County, over 80% of the lands are U.S. Forest Service land. So for us to have a decent working relationship with the Undersecretary is very important. But there were people from all over the state, and not only firefighters, but folks that work with collaborative groups, and that's kind of organizations where they combine people from the timber industry and the environmental community and elected officials and all these different stakeholders to figure out where you can find the sweet spot in terms of where people agree on forest thinning in their communities. Once you find that kind of a social buy-in, if you will, they call that the zones of agreement in a community where there's no opposition. And so the U.S. Forest Service is very interested in learning about how we do things in Colorado, because we are a real leader with these collaboratives in the United States. So I would say the Undersecretary had a lot of great, I think, takeaways from this. Everything from communities developing community wildfire protection plans, which we've had since, I believe, 2005-ish. We supporting various different collaboratives, looking at funding, making sure the U.S. Forest Service is funded properly, But very productive meeting, and I was glad to be a participant in it.
Kudos to the Keystone Center and Christine Scanlon for hosting this.
Exactly, yeah.
This is a big deal sort of a meeting, and it's really nice that the Keystone Center is there to do this sort of thing, right?
It's true.
So.
It's true, yeah.
All right, good. We're going to take another break. We'll be back. We've got 2 more topics. We're going to talk about healthcare reform and marijuana. Welcome back to the County Connection Show for March. This is our final segment. I hope everybody liked my teaser at the end of the last one and you actually stuck around. So we're going to talk healthcare reform and then the most popular subject around the world, seemingly marijuana in Colorado.
Yeah.
I came back from New Zealand, and that was the one thing everybody in New Zealand that I ran across knew about and asked about was marijuana in Colorado. So go figure. Healthcare reform, Thomas, Dan, which one do you want to talk a little bit about the premium issues and some of the concerns that have been raised about Summit County?
I'll start out and then you all jump in.
Okay.
But for everyone watching, this has been, it's safe to say, our #1 priority. We are working in great urgency to figure out these cost challenges that we have in this Region 11. So as a little, for health insurance, little background, after the Affordable Care Act passed, the Division of Insurance Commissioner had a couple different options to figure out how they wanted to be implemented in Colorado. #1 was to come up with one rating system for health insurance. #2 was to look at 6 metro areas and 1 non-metro area, so the non-metro would be considered rural, or to come up with kind of a hybrid type plan. So she recommended kind of a unique structure to come up with 11 rating systems throughout Colorado. So we're in Region 11, which is Summit, Eagle, Garfield, and Pitkin counties. We recognize that health insurance and just living in the mountains is expensive. But recently, I want to say we've been diagnosed because it feels like a plague or something like that. But we have received the distinction, a dubious distinction, as being the most expensive in Colorado. But also a Kaiser report recently said that we're the most expensive in the United States, which is unbelievable, which we don't think is accurate. We all have people and friends that are highly impacted by this. We have friends that are looking to sell their homes because they can't afford to live here now. So we are working on a variety of different ways to remedy this, and I'll let you guys kind of jump in on some of those specifics.
Yeah, so there's a number of factors that go into why we ended up with this, as Dan puts it, dubious distinction of being the most expensive place in the United States of America to sign up for the Affordable Care Act. We think that a lot of the calculations that they're using probably we could argue with, but I think for us it just comes down to a basic sense of fairness of, wait a minute, you know, why, if you're middle class in one of these 4 counties, so above 400% of the federal poverty rate, which in Summit County works out to be only about 125% of the area median income or higher, should you get penalized for living here? It just doesn't seem fair to us. We've spent time in the governor's office talking about this and talking about how urgent this is for us. We've spent time talking with our legislators about this, and they're asking for late bill status in order to try to take on something legislatively. Thankfully, we have some legislators down there under the Gold Dome that are not from this region, that also understand how unfair this is and realize that something needs to be done. We've had a lot of communication with our U.S. senators and Congressman Polis, really this is a state issue. We need the Division of Insurance to do some things differently, but they are certainly helping us with the message back to the state that this is just untenable. So we're doing pretty much everything that we can. And in the meantime, I just want to give kudos to the Family and Intercultural Resource Center, who locally is the entity that is working on signing people up for the Affordable Care Act. They're doing the very best that they can, given some pretty, unfortunate circumstances with how these calculations come out for people that are above 400% federal poverty guidelines, or locally 125% or more of area median income.
And it should be noted that I think FERC would like for people to understand that the program does work well and does provide good, strong benefits at a very affordable cost if you are below those thresholds.
Yeah.
And so if you are in that circumstance and you haven't already taken the steps to go through and sign up for care, you can do that, and you should do that still. Go visit with FERC or go online yourselves to Connect for Health Colorado website and do that, because there are benefits for folks that fall under that threshold. This issue arises for those folks that are in that lower middle class range that are really going to struggle under the current premium structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Karin, did you want to add anything?
Trying to think if there's anything to add. It's just been very clear to us that it's unfair for a certain segment of our population, and we already have a high cost of living here, high cost of housing. We want to keep families here. We don't want to see them move to another county because they can get services here in Summit County but live in another county and pay 1/3 less, or 1/3 the cost for the same premium.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's just plain unfair. We're finally getting some response. And it is a state issue, although our congressman has worked hard on this and pushed at the state level, even though it's not something he can do anything about at the federal level.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to be very specific, to sum this up a little bit, our strategy has been to connect with our federal delegation, senators and congressmen, connect with the governor's office, look to explore state legislation to remedy this immediately, at least for this year. And then last but not least, there is a statewide task force looking at why prices are the way they are in Colorado. And we were successful in having a representative from Summit County. And we have tomorrow the executive director of FERC. And so when you look at some of the goals that we've had, we were able to check off quite a few of those. And for the folks watching, I'm very optimistic that we'll have a bill, but we're going to need Summit County to show up, send letters, go down to the Capitol, tell your stories. We need this bill to pass at the end of the day. I know we don't talk politics necessarily, but this is just very, very important for our community and for the region to see if we can get this bill passed.
Okay, we'll edit that out. All right, so now we want to talk about marijuana. So the sheriff and the county attorney's office were at your meeting earlier today and talking a little bit about marijuana and sort of do's and don'ts and so forth around that. So who wants to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think the basics of the meeting this morning were our attorney's office and Sheriff Minor were in with a document of what they're calling frequently asked questions around enforcement issues with marijuana. And the sheriff particularly wanted our review of that and acceptance of this document so that we're all in agreement with regards to any of the questions that we get or that the sheriff gets around enforcement of recreational marijuana. Here are the answers. And so we went through that document very carefully to say, okay, are we all in agreement that this is our policy, that this is what the sheriff will do with regards to enforcement? So thank you, Sheriff Minor, for coming and sharing that with us. And I think that we've got a good guidance document out there for everyone to look at as questions come up about, you know, what's the answer to all of these questions as we head into this brave new world of recreational marijuana in Colorado.
And so subjects that are covered are what's open in public, where can you smoke, where can't you smoke, some of the information about how much you can carry and how some of the purchasing works, et cetera, et cetera. And so all of that information is available, will be available on the county's website, as well as on the sheriff's page within that website. And probably we'll find one or two other places within the website for it as well, some press releases and so forth. Is it similar to what the towns have done?
We try to be as consistent as possible with this kind of policy as well as others, because most people don't really know clearly where those lines are, and it doesn't make sense to have different policies or ordinances in place. So backing up a little bit, we don't have the authority to put an ordinance on top of what's already state law. The towns do, but we're really comfortable with what the town of Breckenridge and other towns have established as policy right now. And a lot of it is really just reflected in state law. What can you do? What is legal and what isn't, and where is it legal and where isn't it? Not many people really understand it. So just having FAQ information for people is helpful. I think one of the more confusing parts is the public consumption. And basically, public consumption isn't allowed. But where do you draw that line? Is my deck public or not? And that's been one of the more confusing discussions.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, we don't control the rules on the federal land, and there's a lot of federal land in Summit County. So number one, you got to understand, when you're out there on federal lands, the federal laws apply. So not there. And then two, there's a lot of property in Summit County that's under regulation of homeowners associations. And so homeowners associations still have authority to write rules for their HOAs. So don't assume just because you look at the frequently asked questions guidance from the sheriff that you're okay inside your HOA. You need to understand that those HOAs still have the ability to regulate what happens on their property or not. Yeah. So that's a couple of big points.
Yeah, and we recognize the fact that locals have probably figured out the rules and regulations for the most part. However, obviously Summit County, a community that gets a lot of visitors, so we're going to do our best to get as much information out there as possible. We're going to call on the lodging community and the property managers, folks that can really help us out and that work a lot with visitors too, to make sure that folks know they can't just walk down Main Street wherever and consume.
Yep. We were a leader in the state with regards to no smoking indoors, right? And we still believe that. So no matter what that substance is, so that's important to understand. Maybe put that in your head with regards to marijuana, smoking indoors. We don't support that, regardless of whatever it is that's in your pipe.
Yep. And so far, so good.
Yeah.
The reports from the towns and from the sheriff have been that there haven't been any significant incidents since January the 1st, and so that's good news. And I think that's what everybody was hoping to see. So, all right, that's all we've got for today's show. So we'll be back in a month or 3 or 4. Thanks very much for watching.